Hi, I'm Pam Fox at pamfox.org, and in this video I'm going to be kind of summarizing my protocol for reversing hiatal hernia naturally. And so I like to come into some of these support groups every now and then. I get tagged by different people and just answer some of your questions. And really my goal is to just help you better understand your hiatal hernia and better understand this concept of reversing your hiatal hernia. Now, can anyone reverse a hiatal hernia? I really don't know. A lot of my customers that get really good success are people with smaller to moderate sized hiatal hernias. But I've had people get success with larger long-term hiatal hernias. It just takes longer to achieve. And so I'm not going to tell anybody they can't reverse their hiatal hernia, but you know, there's only one way to know, and that's really just to try it and find out for yourself if you're able to. So if you've got a larger hiatal hernia, that means a larger portion of your stomach is herniated through up into the diaphragm, or even all the way through the diaphragm. If you've got an older hiatal hernia, the new adhesions and attachments have formed, which means that it can be harder to move that stomach down and dislodge it from the diaphragm. So smaller, newer hiatal hernias are the easiest to reverse. With that being said, I'm going ahead and just jump right in. This will probably be a rather long video, but my course is actually, I don't know, I think it's altogether, it takes about 3 hours to get through. So we probably will be here for about an hour as I try to hit some of the high points on hiatal hernia reversal. So let's start out. Really, there's basically, I kind of summarized reversing a hiatal hernia naturally into 3 steps. So the first step is to identify and address what caused your hernia in the first place. And so it's important, first of all, to understand, I know new people are joining our groups every day, our support groups every day. New people are getting newly diagnosed every day. So it's important, first of all, to understand that your stomach, when you have a hiatal hernia, is actually pushed through the hole in the diaphragm known as the hiatus. There's a hole in your diaphragm that your esophagus comes through, okay, but your stomach has now pushed through. Your stomach is supposed to hang out down here underneath your diaphragm. Your esophagus goes through that hole known as the hiatus, but when you get a hiatal hernia, your stomach has herniated through the hiatus. So this would be your stomach herniating through the hiatus. And in the case of a larger, you know, in a small hiatal hernia, it might be just down like this. In a larger one, you know, you've got more of your stomach up, and then in a very large, you may even have your entire stomach up in your diaphragm, up in your chest cavity, and that's when they would usually, you'd be a good candidate for surgery in that case. And so this first step of identifying and addressing what caused your hiatal hernia in the first place is really, really important. And what I teach is very comprehensive. I don't just teach how to move the stomach down. I don't just teach an exercise here or an exercise there. I don't just promote heel drops, while I do think that they can be very beneficial. I teach a holistic and comprehensiveness. So that's why this video is going to be long. So the importance of understanding what caused your hiatal hernia in the first place is key, because whatever caused it could be something that is very likely still occurring on a regular day-to-day repetitive basis, okay? And so if you want to naturally move your stomach down, get it out of the diaphragm and move it down so that you can alleviate your symptoms, right? If you reverse your hiatal hernia, you'll alleviate the symptoms that the hernia causes. That's the whole goal. But if you want to get that down naturally, but whatever pushed your stomach up in the first place is still pushing your stomach up, then you're going to have a very big challenge ahead of you. So you've got to address that first. So there are a number of different things that cause hiatal hernias. It could have been, you know, something that you really have no control over. It could be something that happened a long time ago and there's really, you can do nothing about it. But there are a lot of things that you do have control over. So I'm going to talk about those first. So the biggest one is constipation. When you have to bear down in order to pass a bowel movement, your abdominal muscles pull in and that pushes your stomach up. And so for a person who's been constipated repetitively, maybe commonly constipated, they always have to bear down in order to pass a bowel movement. That pressure pushing that stomach up day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year can eventually push that stomach through the diaphragm. Okay, so that's one of the main culprits in causing hiatal hernias. Also, if you have a lot of bloating, that bloating can cause your stomach to expand, and then you combine that with constipation, so you have an expanded stomach pushing against your diaphragm just from the expansion, and then pushing up from the bearing down, so those two things combined together can, over time, create a hiatal hernia. You know, I think I already mentioned if you were pregnant, that could cause a hiatal hernia. The baby pushing up against the stomach as it grows pushes the stomach up against the diaphragm. Trauma is one. You know, if you were in a car accident, or if you were in a high impact sport, or you fell from a high up, landed on your diaphragm, that can cause an injury to your hiatus. Gymnastics is a common occurrence of trauma to the diaphragm. So what else? There's a lot of kind of little things that we have control over that may not have caused your hiatal hernia, but they're certainly contributing and supporting your hiatal hernia. These are things like poor posture. So as soon as I lean over, my diaphragm, which is here, comes down, my stomach comes up, and so you have this pressure of your diaphragm coming down and your stomach coming up. So if you have long-term poor posture, if you slouch a lot, if you sit at a desk a lot, if you drive in a car a lot, and you just have this, you know, diaphragm down, stomach up repetitiveness, that can put pressure. So these are just all different forms of really just pressure that push the stomach against the diaphragm, or the stomach against the diaphragm against the stomach, or both. Tight clothing can cause this. So for a lot of women wear the Spanx and the pantyhose and the tummy slimmers and all these body slenderizing apparatuses that are really popular, and I used to wear them all the time. Those pull in, they pull everything in, and they cause crowding within the abdominal cavity, and they put pressure, they push that stomach up against the diaphragm. Tight belts, same thing. What else am I missing? There's really several. In my course, I think I list 18 different contributors to hiatal hernia, 14 of which we have control over. Okay, so we really need to address these different forms of intragastric pressure and alleviate them. So wearing lighter clothing, you know, addressing your posture, changing your diet so you don't have bloating and constipation. And there's a couple of really great ways you can do that. If you haven't heard of the acid watcher diet, this guy right here, Dr. Jonathan Aviv, gets a lot of success. Not reversing hiatal hernias, but helping people eliminate GERD through his diet. And he has a support group on Facebook you can join. I'm actually leading a support group right now this month. It's a little late to join right now, but I'll probably do another one in a couple of months. So you make sure and follow me, and you'll be notified of that if you're paying attention. But you know, changing your diet so that you are addressing constipation and you are addressing inflammation of the digestive tract and a lot of these different common digestive diseases. So you get you heal the gut, you get your digestive system working ideally. That's going to alleviate a lot of that pressure as well. Okay, so that's number one. Understand, identify, and address what caused your hiatal hernia and what's supporting your hiatal hernia. Because if you want to move that stomach down naturally, you don't want to have something fighting you and pushing it up all the time. Pushing it up all the time. Okay? And one other thing I will mention that's a common contributor or supporter of hiatal hernias are frequent sneezing, frequent coughing, and frequent vomiting. Any one of those or a combination of those. So a lot of times it's a combination of these things. You know, you wear tight clothing, you slouch a lot, you know, maybe you have allergies, so you sneeze a lot, maybe you have constipation, so it's a combination. And then one that's really, really important, and this was a big one for me, is just sucking your gut in. You know, for vanity purposes, just sucking your gut in. It's also tightening your abdominal muscles is a very common response to stress. So we get scared or angry or frustrated and we tighten our muscles, including our abdominal muscles. And that pushes our stomach up and supports that hernia. We relax those abdominal muscles and that gives the stomach room to hang down, to hang downward. Okay? So that's number one. Identify and address what caused and what's supporting your hiatal hernia. Number 2 is, and remember, stick around because at the end of the video I'm gonna demonstrate a couple of exercises on how to actually move your stomach down and strengthen your diaphragm. I'm not going to share them all because I think I teach 10 different ones, and it's a rather long tutorial, but I'm going to share 2 of the more popular ones. So the second thing we do to reverse our hiatal hernia naturally is we move our stomach down. So I'm going to talk a lot about that, and then I'm going to talk about how we strengthen our diaphragm, and then I'm just going to lead and show the demonstration or the tutorial of the actual exercise. But it's important for me to talk about these exercises first so that you do them accurately, okay? So step 2 is actually moving the stomach down. So you can do this. I first learned about this from my chiropractor. He was actually able to move my stomach down and give me a little bit of relief right there in the office. By the time I got out to the parking lot, I was symptomatic again. Okay, so I knew that I needed to learn how to do this myself. And I watched him do it, and it was actually quite painful when he did it for me. He got in there, he really got in there, he dug in there with his hands, and he just started yanking my stomach down, really yanking it down. And he didn't give me any instruction on, to relax my abs or anything like that. And I think that was really what was missing, because if I'm pulling my abs in and all like frustrated and scared and stressed out because he's getting in there and digging around and it hurts, then yeah, it's just going to slide right back up as soon as he's done. Most of us have what's known as a sliding hiatal hernia. Any little bit of pressure is going to push that stomach back through that hole, because anyway, I'm sorry, I got distracted from the comments. So I'm gonna swipe those comments off, and I will address those after the live, because I do need to get going at about 4:45. So I'm gonna just try to move along pretty quickly. So moving the stomach down, it's really important. This is really, really important. So listen up. You've got to first learn how to relax your abdominal muscles. Your abdominal muscles, okay? These are the ones that when we pull in tight, that pushes the stomach up. So if you're trying to move your stomach down and you're pulling your gut in, that's counterproductive, okay? So you've got to first of all learn how to relax those stomach muscles. And you might be thinking, well, that's not a big deal. I'll just relax my stomach muscles. Some people can do that very easily. Other people have no idea if they're even contracting their stomach muscles. So what you can try right now is just try to really relax your gut. Just let it hang all out. And if all of a sudden when you go to relax your gut, it just hangs all out, it gets kind of big and round, then you were pulling in your stomach muscles. You were contracting your stomach muscles. A lot of people commonly contract their stomach muscles very, very frequently. Very, very frequently. Even if they don't even think they're stressed. They might be just brushing their teeth, getting ready to go to work, and their stomach's pulled in tight, and they don't even realize it. So the first thing we need to do is really start to practice this idea of relaxing the abs. And I know a lot of people think, well, I can't do that, then it'll look like I have a big gut. Well, this is what's going to give your stomach the room to move down. Okay, as long as you're sucking in your gut, that's holding your stomach up against your diaphragm. So this is really, really key. It might not sound like that big or important, but it's so, so important. This was a huge breakthrough for me in developing my protocol and getting success in reversing my hiatal hernia, is learning how to relax my abs. And it took me weeks, if not months. In fact, still to this day, I catch myself pulling in my abs and feeling a little bit of that old kind of nausea sensation, because it will push my stomach up against my diaphragm. And even if it doesn't go through, even if your stomach is pressed against your diaphragm, that can cause irritation and cause symptoms. If it's enough pressure, putting pressure on your lower esophageal sphincter to kind of irritate it and cause you to feel a little nauseous or a little indigestion, and then you relax those abs and get that stomach back down, and then you feel instantly better. So, and that's what we want. We want to get relief from our symptoms. So in order to do that, we need to reverse that hiatal hernia. Get that hiatal hernia down, get rid of the hiatal hernia, get rid of the symptoms it creates, okay? So the way we learn how to relax our abs, a couple of different things you can do is a very gentle abdominal massage. Okay, I'm just going to stand up so you can see my stomach. So this is just, it's almost like a scratch. Just coming in, and you can try this now, it should feel good. Relax your belly, and just in a clockwise motion, you always want to go down the left. When I stream live, everything's reversed. So this is my left side. So you always want to go down your left side because your stomach is on the left and you want your stomach to move down. So you can do kind of a circular motion as you come over your hiatal hernia. That may be painful or cause more irritation. So you can just like come right up above that and just come over and come in. You can even just like scratch your stomach. You know, dogs, you know, they're really, really smart. They love to have their bellies rubbed, and I never quite understood that. And now I do. It feels really good to get that abdominal muscular tension. You know, when you have kind of a sore muscle and you come in and you start massaging it, or your, you know, your back or your neck, and it's like, oh, that feels really, really good because you're relieving that. You're relieving that tension. Well, we have a lot of tension in our abs as well. So you can just come in and really just let it hang out and give it a little massage to help relax those muscles. They're very tight. Any muscles that are contracted all the time and never get a chance to really, you know, stretch are going to be tight and inflexible. So it can take time and commitment and effort and consistency in order to get those muscles to start to relax and expand. And what I want to talk about next is really important, is this idea of abdominal expansion. Okay, so when we inhale, our lungs fill with air, they expand. Our rib cage and the muscles that in between the bones, all of that, it expands as well. Okay, the lungs expand, and so the ribs and the muscles expand as well. Why? Because those lungs need room. They're opening up, they're expanding like a balloon, and they need that room. Otherwise, there's going to be pressure on the lungs, and they're not going to be able to expand. So the whole rib cage expands when we breathe in. And what does the diaphragm do? It moves down. So everything makes way and opens up and expands to give those lungs the room that they need in order to take a full breath. Okay, so down here in the abdominal cavity, here's the diaphragm right underneath the rib cage. Here's the diaphragm. So when we breathe in and the lungs expand, the diaphragm, again, it moves down. Okay, and so what's happening down here in the abdominal cavity? The diaphragm is moving down and it's creating all of this pressure on the organs in the abdominal cavity. There are many organs in the abdominal cavity. And so what is supposed to happen is the musculature of the abdomen, of the stomach, is supposed to expand when we breathe in to make room in the abdominal cavity. That's what's supposed to happen. But as adults, we have become what some people call shallow breathers or chest breathers, and we're sucking in our guts all the time, and so our bellies don't expand. Watch a little child or a baby sleep, and you'll see with every breath their abdomen expands like a balloon when they breathe in. And that's what we need to relearn how to do, okay? Because we need to have room in that abdominal cavity instead of crowding in that abdominal cavity, so that the diaphragm and the stomach aren't pressed against each other, okay? So again, when we breathe in and that diaphragm comes down, for those of you with a hiatal hernia, think of this. This is a really good thing. With every breath we take, our diaphragm moves up and down, okay? So if our diaphragm is pushing our stomach down, that's a good thing, because we want the stomach to what? We want it to move down. So that diaphragm is pushing our stomach down. But in the case of a hiatal hernia, the stomach is oftentimes lodged in the diaphragm. So it'll push the stomach down, which is what we want, but then it'll carry that stomach back up when the diaphragm moves back up on the exhale, okay? So what I'm going to teach you now, we'll just go through this, a little bit of a demonstration, and you can try it at home, is a way to move your stomach down, but then when that diaphragm moves back up, we start to create separation. We start to create separation, which can give you relief of your symptoms for some of you, if we can create that separation. Now, if you have a larger hiatal hernia, much of your stomach is up here, and you're not going to get it all the way down. Maybe you're just going to wiggle it down a little bit, and that could cause you to feel worse because you're just putting more pressure on tissues that are already irritated and sensitive and injured. Okay, so you want to be really careful if you try these exercises, and you want to try these exercises, of course, at your own risk, and you want to try them with logic. I don't know you or your circumstances. This is just what I did in order to reverse my hiatal hernia, and I've been helping people reverse hiatal hernias every day since I was able to develop this protocol. But you need to do it with logic, and I always advise that you be very, very gentle. Be very, very gentle. This isn't just a one-time aggressive pop and fix. It's a slow process of moving the stomach down, because remember, within the abdominal cavity, we have a mesentery. These are the adhesions that hold all the organs in place. And so if you have an older hiatal hernia and your stomach is up here, it's reattached itself with literal adhesions, okay, in the diaphragm. And so we need to start slowly and gently moving and rocking that stomach down and stretching those adhesions, And then once we fully get the stomach down here, we continue to do the exercises daily for maintenance, and then we create new adhesions down here where the stomach originated, where it belongs. So I hope that makes sense. So I'm going to go ahead and stand up again. Now I'm going to find my left side. Remember, everything's reversed, but your stomach is on your left. This just looks like my right, but it is my left side. So your stomach is here. Here is the bottom rib of my rib cage, so you want to find that. Your stomach is here just underneath the left rib, and your liver is on the right side. So your stomach is right here. So what we want to do is we want to come in with our hands underneath that bottom rib, and we want to relax our belly. So really just release any tension over here in the obliques on the sides, throughout the abdominal wall, up high, down low. Just really kind of relax and let that go. Relax your shoulders as well, and relax your jaw, because when we do these exercises, we want to begin to relax and slow the breath. And it shouldn't be a forced deep breathing. It should be a state of relaxation where deep breathing, deep, relaxed, slow breaths feel normal and natural. So we're coming over on the left side, and we're just finding our stomach, just pushing in a little bit just underneath. Here's my rib right here, my lower rib. So I'm just coming and rolling over that bottom rib, and I'm just pressing in. You can use both hands. And you want to be over here more to the left, because your hernia and your hiatus is closer, kind of like here's the middle right here. Your hernia, everyone's going to be different, but commonly it's kind of just to the left of center. You don't want to push right on that, because those tissues are irritated, sensitive, and injured, and that is most likely is going to be painful. Okay, so wherever you touch, if it's really, really painful, really just let up and don't push quite so hard, or find a spot that's not painful. Maybe come further over here. You can come down. You can even come down here closer to the intestines, because what we're going to do here in just a moment is we're just going to attempt to hold the stomach down as the diaphragm does this, moves up and down with the breath. So again, what we're trying to do, the diaphragm is going to push the stomach down, but then because we're going to be over here holding the stomach down, or I should say over here, holding the stomach down, then when the diaphragm moves down and then it moves up, because we're holding this down, the diaphragm will come up and separate away from the stomach. That's the goal. Again, if it's really lodged in there, this may take days, it may take weeks, it may take months. I even had one person say it took her a little over a year. Not to get her stomach dislodged, but to completely reverse the hiatal hernia, and that gets more into healing the diaphragm, which is the third thing we're going to talk about as soon as I'm done leading this demonstration. So let's go ahead and do it. So come over to the left side, find a spot that's not too tender, push inward and down. Doesn't have to be a lot. Relax your abs, relax your shoulders, relax your jaw, and just connect with your breath. Make sure you're standing up tall, or you're sitting up straight. Okay, the taller you can sit, the better, if that's comfortable, because again, your diaphragm is connected to your rib cage. If I'm slouched over, my diaphragm is down. If I'm sitting up tall, my diaphragm is nice and high. And we want to get that diaphragm up nice and high to create that separation. Okay? So again, we're holding the stomach, we're relaxing the abs, and we're just breathing gently. Just breathing in and out. And so with each breath, the diaphragm is moving up and down, and with each breath, you want to look for any tension in your abs and let that go with each breath. Breathing in and out, looking for the tension and letting it go. And then as you practice this and you become more and more relaxed, you'll notice the breaths become longer and deeper. And that's good, because the next thing we're going to talk about is the importance of a long exhalation and how that isolates and strengthens your diaphragm. So right now I'm just holding a little bit of pressure. It doesn't take much. You don't have to get in there and dig in deep. Now if you're a heavier person, this is going to be a little bit different. You might have to kind of feel around to find a spot where you feel like you're putting enough pressure on that stomach to kind of hold it down. But just because there's a lot more fat between your fingers and your stomach doesn't mean that that pressure isn't holding it down. That pressure will hold it down. If you feel like you need to burp, go ahead and burp and release that air that you're kind of getting a little bit of movement and getting that air to move. Just let that go. If you notice any gurgling or any bubbles, that's a good sign that you're getting movement. You're getting that stomach to rock, 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 and eventually loosen any of that trapped gas. Hiatal hernias can trap a lot of gas. That's why a lot of people have frequent or chronic belching. Okay, so that's step 2, is learning how to master the ability to move your stomach down, and this can take practice. And what I suggest is that you commit to 5 or 10 minutes a day and be very, very gentle, okay? And just come in and kind of feel around. Relax the abs and kind of do this and very slowly feel around. And if you push on a certain spot and you feel bubbles or you hear bubbles, then that's the spot you want to focus on. You want to stay on that spot where you feel bubbles. Really seek out any tension in the abs with every breath. Look for it. And the moment you think you've found all the tension and your abs are as relaxed as they possibly can, look for more tension in those abs and let that go. Okay? Because the more you can relax those abs with every breath, the more room that's going to give that stomach to, it's just going to allow gravity to help you out and let it hang down, hang down, hang down. Okay? So you want to make sure to do this, either on an empty stomach. A lot of people tell me they do it on a full stomach and they're just fine. And in fact, it gives them, they'll have a full stomach and they'll be symptomatic right after a meal, and then they'll do this and it will give them relief. So, you can try it. The trouble with that is for someone with a larger hiatal hernia, if you have, I'm going to grab a prop here. I hope this doesn't pop because it's old. Ugh. I don't want to have to change my clothes if this pops. I'm going to hold a bowl here. If you have a hiatal hernia like this, where the majority of your stomach is up here in the chest cavity and just a little bit is down here, and your stomach is full because you just ate a really, really big meal, okay? Look at that. It looks like kind of like an hourglass. You've got all this food up here in your chest cavity and it's trying to make its way through that hiatus and into the stomach, into the abdominal cavity. And then you get in there and you start trying to pull that stomach down with these exercises. That's going to be uncomfortable, okay? It's going to be painful probably, and it's going to be difficult to get that stomach to move in this position. But when it's empty, or at least partially empty, I don't think it has to be all the way empty, it's going to be a lot easier. So a couple things just to keep in mind. If you try this exercise and it makes you more symptomatic, please be logical, stop the exercise, and just focus on relaxing the abs and learning how to breathe into your belly. That could be a way to start. And then you could try this again maybe in a couple of days. Try it again. Try it in different positions, maybe lying down on your back, maybe in a reclining position in a chair. Okay, so everyone's going to be different just depending on your hernia, your circumstances. Okay, so the third part of this protocol is all about the diaphragm. So again, your diaphragm is this muscle. It's this dome-shaped muscle right here underneath your rib cage, and there's a hole in it known as the hiatus. And ideally, in a healthy person without a hiatal hernia, it's just like a little bigger than a coin slot. Enough room for that esophagus to come through, okay? Unfortunately, for those with hiatal hernia, that little coin slot has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. And that can happen for a number of reasons. Remember that the diaphragm is a skeletal muscle, and it can become weak, so that that hole can become weak and widened and enlarged. It can become dilated and relaxed due to a number of different, very commonly prescribed medications. I just did a video on this in my 28-day challenge support group last week. I'm not going to go through all of those medications, but you can certainly look it up yourself and see if the medications you're taking, if they're any type of a relaxer or a dilator. I took asthma inhalers all my life, and so I believe that was probably partially one of the contributors to my hiatal hernia. So that can cause, and I'm not telling anyone to stop taking their medications. That's something you need to work with your doctor on. I think it's a great goal to get off your medications, but you need to work with your doctor. See if there's an alternative medication that you could take, or if there's alternative ways that you could get off of your medications and heal your conditions without drugs. But work with your doctor. So yeah, the hole can just become dilated and relaxed because of medications. I talked earlier about trauma to the diaphragm, so it can become injured. That's a little bit lesser. I mean, it happens, but some people can even be born with a hiatal hernia where that hole doesn't fully develop in utero. So maybe just from the start, it's always a little bit on the larger side. But the good news is, and this is really good news, the diaphragm is skeletal muscle. What does that mean? Well, that means that we have the ability, just like we have the ability to do this and strengthen a bicep, we have the ability to strengthen our diaphragm. And so I'm going to do just like I did before. I'm going to talk a little bit about this next exercise, and then I'll demonstrate it and you can try it. So the diaphragm moves up and down with every breath. So you can think about the diaphragm as, contracting and stretching and relaxing a little bit, with every breath that we take. You can think of it as working harder, when you're running, and being more relaxed, when you're taking a nap or whatever. So, but it's always with every breath, always up and down, up and down, up and down your entire life. That's what your diaphragm does. So the way that we strengthen that is we want to isolate it, and we want to put a little bit of resistance to it, right? Just like if we want to strengthen our bicep, if we put a little bit of weight in our hands, that resistance is going to help strengthen that muscle. And so then what happens when we strengthen muscle? We'll simply put the fibers in muscles, in order for them to become tighter and stronger, they have to first, in a sense, be injured. They have to tear and rip and be broken, and then they repair and build up. And when they do, when those fibers, they get torn from the resistance, from the workout, and then they repair, okay? Because when we have an injury, what does the body do? It sends what's needed to begin the healing process of those injuries, even at the cellular level. Repair those fibers, and when that happens, they repair tighter, bigger, bulkier, shorter. The muscle fibers, instead of being long, they get shorter. And so with that hiatus, what we're trying to do is to tighten and bulken and strengthen so that hole isn't quite so big. And we're strengthening the entire diaphragm, which is good too, because then instead of it being, a flabby, overworked, exhausted diaphragm, because we've been chest breathing for the last 30 years instead of belly breathing, now it becomes an ideally a really healthy, strong diaphragm that's able to go through the full range of motion, that's able to take full breaths. So that's what we're trying to do. I mean, we're trying to get the stomach out of the diaphragm so that obstruction is no longer there. That's going to help you take fuller breaths. But we're trying to condition and strengthen the diaphragm through this breath work, okay? And so what's really, really important, and listen up because this is like the most important thing that I can say about diaphragm breathing, is that you have to do very specific hiatal hernia diaphragmatic breathing, which is what I'm going to show you next. But the reason for that is because if you go and you Google, diaphragm exercises, a lot of singers will do these exercises to strengthen their diaphragm, and you follow those instructions and you have a hiatal hernia, you're actually going to be supporting your hiatal hernia, because those instructions will always tell you to pull in your abs. They'll tell you to pull in your abs, and that's because when you pull in your abs, that pushes the diaphragm, it pushes the stomach up, which pushes the diaphragm up, and it helps really deflate all the air out of the lungs, and it just takes that diaphragm through its full range of motion, which is what we want, which is what we're going to try to achieve. But we're going to do it with relaxed abs. Okay, we're going to do it with relaxed abs. That is the key to this. If we're trying to strengthen our diaphragm, we want to isolate it, which means we want the diaphragm to do the work. And if we're aiding that diaphragm by pulling our gut in, we're not isolating it. And we're also pushing the stomach up against the diaphragm. And we want the stomach to stay down. So we must relax the belly. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and lead and demonstrate one of the exercises that I teach for diaphragm strengthening, specifically for people with hiatal hernia. You can try it along at home. I'm going to stand up for this. I prefer doing these exercises either standing, or I like doing them lying down as well, but this particular one needs to be done either in a seated position or a standing position. So lying down would be a little bit tricky. So I'm going to go ahead and stand up, and I'm going to back up a little bit. All right. So, all right, hopefully you can hear me. So I like to start with the hands in prayer pose and really bring my attention to my abs and relax that belly. You can come in and, again, give it a scratch if that helps, to really just kind of start to alleviate any tension and really get it to stretch and relax. I like to come into prayer pose, and the hands will come up over the head. I know you can't see me very well, but as you breathe in, the hands reach up, and then they come down light as a feather, really relaxing the arms and the abs together, the shoulders, and exhale, okay? And that's all there is to it. So before we go through this, I just want to explain what we're doing here. So when the hands come up, as the hands rise up, that is going to actually lift our diaphragm. Remember, our diaphragm is attached to our rib cage. So as the hands come up, the rib cage comes up and it brings the diaphragm up with it. And this, through here, the torso is now being stretched. So this stomach and the esophagus is getting stretched downward like that as the diaphragm moves up. Now again, with a hiatal hernia, it may likely bring your stomach up with it, but it's just starting to create that stretching, which is what we want because we're stretching in those adhesions. Okay, so we breathe in, hands rise up, and if it hurts to go too far up, just don't go so far up. You can just come halfway up if you want. You can come out to the side if you want. Do what's comfortable for you. You can work up to this. But this is the idea. So we lift the diaphragm, breathe in, and then we exhale and we relax as much as possible. So in this, when we're coming down, it's light as a feather, looking, and this is really important. This is really important. Looking for the tension everywhere in the body, especially abs, and just breathing that out. Okay, and we come back to prayer pose. Inhale up, exhale down. Light as a feather, exhale, 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 looking for tension, letting it go, looking for tension, letting it go. Inhale up, exhale down, looking for tension, letting it go, looking for tension, letting it go. So we're not done yet. So that's the gist of the exercise, but here is where the magic happens. So when you're exhaling, that's when your diaphragm, so remember, when we breathe in, the lungs expand, the diaphragm moves down. So that's on the inhale. Diaphragm is coming down. As we exhale, what's happening is the diaphragm, the lungs are deflating of air as we breathe out, and the diaphragm does what? It moves up and up and up. And as long as we continue to exhale, that diaphragm is up. As long as we continue to exhale, that diaphragm is up. Okay, so we're taking that diaphragm through the full range of motion. We are isolating it by relaxing the abs. Okay, and we're making it work a little bit harder by fully exhaling. So what I mean by fully exhaling is on the exhale, you breathe out all the way, and when you think you've breathed all of the air out, you breathe out a little bit more, okay? So a couple of things to really be careful about when you do this exercise. One, if you feel lightheaded or dizzy at any time, stop, sit down, take a break. You may even want to, if you find that you really get lightheaded and dizzy doing this, you may want to just do it in a seated position, like do it on your sofa. I have had people tell me they almost passed out from this particular exercise. So if you pass out and hit your head on the ground, this exercise is not healthy or beneficial for you. You don't want to pass out and hit your head on the ground. All right, so make sure you're smart and make sure you're safe when you do this. At any time, if you feel dizzy or you feel like you're gonna faint, just stop and just breathe normal. Just breathe normal. You might just want to do one time. Exhale, 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 relax, 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 and then just breathe normal. Keep those abs relaxed, and then maybe do it again, 20 or 30 seconds later. Do it however you need to do it to be safe, okay? The last thing I want to talk about is the vagus nerve. Your vagus nerve starts up in the brain and it runs down along the neck. It innervates the heart and the lungs, and it comes down the esophagus. It innervates the stomach and all of the organs in the abdominal cavity. It's known as the wandering nerve, and it has very important functions in the body. And just as, if you have carpal tunnel or sciatica, when we have a pinched nerve, we can have, pain and other symptoms that radiate beyond where that nerve is pinched. Carpal tunnel is a really good example. You can have, the nerve is pinched here, and you can have pain and numbness and tingling in your fingers, right? Because of that pinched nerve. And so this nerve, again, it's on the esophagus, along the stomach. And so, if your stomach is getting pushed into your diaphragm all the time, sometimes the stomach even gets twisted, it gets folded, or if it's in the diaphragm, in the case of hiatal hernia, then you've got essentially a belt around your stomach putting pressure on that nerve. And that can cause a whole myriad of symptoms. And as we're moving the stomach down, again, if you're a person that's got a larger hiatal hernia and we're starting to gently, rock that stomach down, that can put additional pressure on your vagus nerve. So again, be very logical about this. If it's painful or causing you to feel like you're gonna, pass out, or you get tunnel vision or anything out of the ordinary like that, just stop. Just stop, focus on the belly breathing, and just come back to this another time. Focus first on the belly breathing if you feel like any of these exercises that I've showed you today are causing you additional stress. So I just want to wrap up by reminding you that I am not a doctor. This is, I had a hiatal hernia and GERD, and my symptoms were inescapable, and I was getting to the point where, even though I've had a long list of illnesses my whole life, and I was used to being sick, that was my norm, this was driving me insane, and I desperately sought out answers. And I was able to find the answers to my questions, and I was able to develop a protocol that worked to reverse my hiatal hernia. Now, I had a small 2-centimeter hiatal hernia, so mine was small. And again, usually the people that I'm commonly helping typically have smaller hiatal hernias. So I'm not going to tell somebody they can't reverse a hiatal hernia if they have a larger one. My mom's a really good example of someone that it took a very long time, and she still, I think she's got a very large hiatus. I don't know how much tighter she can get that thing, but she's doing really well. She was able to get off of her medications. She is able to manage her symptoms. She's symptom-free much of the time, and when she is symptomatic, she's able to get relief by herself naturally with these techniques. So I'm never going to tell somebody they can't reverse a hiatal hernia, but I will say it is easier and more common for the smaller hiatal hernias, okay? So hopefully this brings value to you, and it's something that you can look into and try out. If you have any questions, you can post them in this video below, and I will answer them later, but right now I've got to get to work. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope everyone has a wonderful day.